Richardson up ahead, look out. Hello, Amari Stoudemire elevates and detonates.
And welcome in, everybody, to the Suns Planet podcast. I'm Jake, you know me, Fallen Founder, and we've got our special guest back, Bruce the Juice, the Wizard Man, calling all the way back in from Boston, right, Bruce?
Yes, I am.
All right, and I got to ask you, who do you feel better about right now, the Celtics or the Suns after the trade deadline?
Oh, 100% the Celtics. The Suns put me in a little bit of a turmoil, but I took a piece out of Suns Geek, a bite of optimism cookie with him, and I'm kind of on the upswing right now. So,
ooh, I'm going to do my best to headbutt you. And as I was on that super duper mega pod with the Geekster, and I was fighting him off, and with his optimism, I was bringing in my reign of depression. I was not going to allow us to think too positive about this situation, but we'll get into all that. And thanks for joining us. We've got our main man, Kevin Thriller from Manila. He's off today. We'll be back next week, I believe. And we're going to be packing our bags to go to do a little tango, I hope, as we will be visiting a Suns fan in Argentina. I felt like, post-deadline, we might as well do some more international visits, learn a little bit more about Suns fandom around the world. And we got to find the positivity somewhere. But Bruce, you're coming equipped, as you mentioned, with the Suns Geek mentality, so maybe you'll be able to shine some light on it. Let's start with the first place you need to shine a lot of light. The Portland Trailblazers beat us to start this week of games, 127-108. I'm sure you're going to tell me there's a lot of good things we can take away here. But let's see. This was just a brutal week. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think all of us predicted last week a 3-1 run. 2 wins against the Blazers, 1 against the Jazz, probable loss to the Thunder. Instead, it went 1-3. Obviously, we're going to break it all down here. But starting with the back-to-back, both games against the Blazers were in Portland. And I don't know. Let's start it with this. Did DeAndre Ayton, were these some revenge games?
Yeah, it's just tough because you see a team like Portland and you know where the Suns are supposed to be with this roster, regardless if Kevin Durant or Bradley Beal aren't playing in these games. But you know what this talent is supposed to present with this team. And the fact that they're going into these late game shenanigans or close games versus a Portland Trailblazers squad is very sad. Now, the Blazers have been on an uptick over the last couple of weeks. I believe they've won like 10 of their last 11. So maybe they are on a hot streak and they have gotten some really good luck and they've really understand their engine really now with Chauncey Billups, but I'm just kind of perplexed. I'm very frustrated that they lost those games, and it's crazy to see like the Suns traded DeAndre Ayton obviously because he couldn't be a great center, but then the Suns play him and look what he does against us. It's just absolutely ridiculous to see.
Well, and perhaps not shockingly, the Suns did lose the rebound battle, not by a ton, 37-43. But really, some of my big takeaways as I kind of poured through the stats, and I caught more of the second game than I did this first one, but mostly because I saw what was happening in the first one. I didn't really want to go in and look at it. But the Blazers only shot 29% from 3, but 52% overall, which tells me they were getting just about anything they wanted inside. And we see this with DeAndre Ayton shooting 11 of 12, Toumani Camara shooting 7 of 11. I mean, you would think that they would be led by who I would claim are their 2 best players, Anthony Simmons, is it? And Jeremy Grant. But they actually went a combined 11 for 25. So it was not... I feel like this is it reminds me a little bit of that game against the Mavericks when Luka went out and Kyrie could not make a basket. Don't worry, Mavericks still won. They still beat up on the Suns at that time around Christmas. So that's kind of the vibe I had with this game. The Suns, though, Devin Booker carrying the way, 37 points on 11 of 18 shooting. Kevin Durant, always Mr. Consistent, 22 points. Surprisingly, 1 rebound, 3 assists to 3 turnovers, not stuff you like to see. Ryan Dunn got the start, chipped in 2 points in 20 minutes. Nick Richards got the start, and over 25 minutes, he got you 1 point and 10 rebounds. And Tyus Jones started 9 points. Let's lob this question in there first too, early as well. Can this be the starting lineup moving forward, or does Bud need to make some changes?
I think there need to be some changes made. It's kind of been clear that the guard lineup doesn't work. That's why one of them got moved. But what we've seen is, and we'll get into this in a little bit when we talk about the Thunder game and the second Blazers game, is that they just attack Tyus defensively. Offensively, excuse me. Like any coach will just run whoever offense on Tyus, and Joe Mazzulla will refer this as like the killer whale mentality. You attack the weakest link, and that's what's happening with the Suns here. So necessarily, I don't know if adding Bradley Beal would necessarily change anything, but adding his much needed offense and a little bit better size while moving Tyus to the bench, I do think could help this squad a little bit more. And it's something that we haven't seen. I don't know if it's because they're still holding that promise to Tyus Jones still of the starting job, but I would like to see a little bit of change with the starting lineup.
Yeah, and I think now that the trade deadline is here and gone, we can admit that Tyus, good point guard, just maybe not right for this system. I feel like that's been the best way to describe this entire franchise of late. Bradley Beal, great player, just not right for this team. Yeah. Kevin Durant, great player, maybe just wasn't right for this team as well. I mean, there's still debates to be had on that. So Tyus Jones, though, you're right. That's why, actually, when I was giving my grade on the Super Duper Megapod, the acquisition of Cody Martin and Vasile Micic. Is it? Okay. Yes. Let's call him Vasile for now. But both of them are not so much Cody. Cody's more on a wing, but a decent size, 6'5", 6'6". And Vasile, I believe, is 6'5". Tyus is what, 6 foot flat? He's not a big guy at all. He doesn't have a lot of size. Bradley Beal was guarding Zion Williamson last year for us. He's a smaller guard, but he's, I don't know, stout. He's thick. He's got a butt. If Hama was here, he'd say he's got the booty to do the work. Bradley can hang in there, I feel like, a little bit better than Tyus can in kind of those physical matchups, which exactly what you're getting at. Tyus is just, they pick on him too much. And where he would thrive would be a little bit more in facilitating, which I think they've moved away from. They turned it a little bit more back to, I wouldn't come out and say point Book for sure, but Booker's, since Beal has moved to the bench and as a sixth man, Beal's been playing pretty lights out, I feel like, throughout his time. A couple games off here and there, but otherwise big scoring numbers, big assist numbers moving forward. But yeah, I do think that Tyus probably can't remain. Because there's no incentive for this team to tank at all. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But there's no pot of gold of Cooper Flagg sitting for us at the end of the season. So you might as well tinker until you find something that actually results in winning games.
Oh, I 100% agree. And you could even piggyback off that as well, where I think you described it perfectly, where it doesn't even necessarily have to be somebody that is 100% going to get that starting job. I just think that either Beal or Grayson kind of does deserve it because Booker's kind of playing that point guard kind of with this new system. And Beal, like you mentioned, had some inconsistencies off the bench in some games, but for a majority of the time been pretty consistent as that secondary scorer for this unit. And that's why he doesn't really fit in with the starting lineup, because there's too much ball for the 3 stars. So I think having him on that bench unit, if you do have Tyus, can kind of, have him have a secondary ball handler to feed him the ball if you do insert Grayson, or if you do move Beal into the starting lineup, then you just have him as a secondary catch and shoot shooter where you could have Grayson and Tyus control that second unit as that offense.
What would you say about running out Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neal into the starting lineup with Booker, Richards, and Durant? A little bit more defense in, but then you're obviously for sure we'll see an uptick in turnovers because KD will touch the ball more and actually try and create more on his own. But then you are committed to the point Book experiment once again.
I honestly don't mind that at all. I think, like you mentioned, it adds that much needed size for this team in that starting lineup. And personally, I think Ryan Dunn complements Booker very well if Booker is going to be playing that point guard, because the one problem with the Suns is they don't have a secondary ball handler, defensive playmaking point guard similar to like an Alex Caruso type. Like I think that's like a perfect fit for a Devin Booker if you wanted to have him start alongside another guard. But unfortunately, the Suns don't have a player like that, or can't acquire a player like that now post trade deadline. So I think having those wings would be nice. Now, the only thing that does scare me at that is when you look at the bench, I don't necessarily know who's our wings coming off the bench. So if you're going to be running that, you'd have Tyus, Grayson, and Beal. It is very solid with the shooting, but I feel like we have then 3 of the same player playing the same thing, similar to what Juan was saying earlier. We have a lot of players who don't fit together in our roster 100%.
Which is frustrating because I still remember coming into the season, I'm like, oh my gosh, our bench looks a lot better than it did the previous year. I thought we had a lot of guys that would play together, but I mean, that's actually, it's funny. This question could also be saved for later, but let's get it out of the way now. Do you blame, we don't have to get into the breakdown of what, because, everyone's going to deserve some blame, right? The players do, the coaches do, the front office. But I've seen a lot of, well, this front office ruined it. And it's like, I also kind of see it as, hey, the front office finally went big game hunting, acquired Kevin Durant. We got a super mega star to come to Phoenix. We had the aging Chris Paul on a bloated contract with a Landry Shamet contract and some second-round picks to acquire, at the time, what looked like, maybe not the healthiest Bradley Beal, but still somebody that we knew could be elite. How much are you frustrated with the front office for swinging for the fences?
So a little frustrated, I would say. I think everyone, like you said, deserves a part of the blame here. I don't think that you can fully blame it on the front office because the players do show up and the players do play. But if you don't put the right roster around the players, then it's going to be redundant anyways. I also think the coaching as well, that has been a discussion over the last couple of weeks, but the coaching over the last 3 years has just been like, you have one good quality of the coach that you like, but then there's 8 bad qualities, and each coach has that. And I think it was on the mega pod that you guys were doing when I was watching this, where someone brought up that if you could combine the best part of Monty, the best part of Frank, and the best part of Coach Bud, you'd have the perfect coach, which is true. But unfortunately, the Suns can't find that guy. Now, there are fans that I've been seeing clamoring to go get Bob Myers in to run this front office, and I don't necessarily know if that's something that I would agree with. But I do think that the front office definitely deserves some blame, because even though they did go big star hunting for a Phoenix market that hasn't really been able to do that, I still think there could have been some better alternative trades that they could have gotten done if they possibly had waited or possibly had moved off on these players when they should have.
Well, and that's the hard thing for me too. Just because hindsight being 2020, yes, I can sit back and be like, oh, what a terrible decision that was. Look at that no trade contract, you idiots. But at the time, I was like, oh my God. I went right to my sports betting app. I was like, title going all the way. I was bought into it. And then I thought, Monty, he's going to get this team, Kevin Durant and Booker. He's going to take them to the next level. Okay, not Monty. Frank Vogel, he's going to teach these guys how to play defense. We're going to be locked in. Okay, not Vogel. Bud is going to unlock this offensive juggernaut. It's going to happen. So, sorry, I just found out that we currently got stopped on Twitter. So from streaming. So, all right. I have to take a look at that here in a moment. But that was we're having trouble streaming to Twitter. This may be an issue on Twitter's end. We'll keep trying and let you know. Well, you keep trying to let me know, and get it together. Elon Musk, fix this system. But I like this. I thought it was creative. Mr. Darth Voida, managing editor of Bright Side of the Sun, said the Suns are like a lasagna that is made up of taco meat, which personally I enjoy. American cheese, definitely not the best of cheeses. Oranges instead of tomatoes. That would start to lead to some problems. And then, of course, dog shit, which would probably make it less desirable for most. So that's the feeling we've got. But good news on the horizon. We played the Blazers again 2 nights later, and we dropped it in overtime. We made the game closer. 119 to 121 in this game. Once again, led by Devin Booker with 34 points. Now, let me read you some of these numbers because I feel like we just went over this. But 34 points from Booker, great. 27 points from Mr. Consistent Kevin Durant, that's great. Ryan Dunn starts, 0 points. Nick Richards starts, 2 points. Tyus Jones starts, 0 points. Now, granted, all three of those guys ended up playing about 10 minutes fewer than the first game. But that's, again, speaks to why this, let me tweak the question now. How frustrating is it that we're still tweaking rotations this late in the season?
Very frustrating. And as a team that should be, consistent on the right path, making the right moves with the star talent we have, it should be working. The argument with Bradley Beal is he's still a top player. Even if he doesn't fit, they should still be able to find a way for this team to work and to build around it. Even if he is coming off the bench, it has been successful if you put the right players around him. One of the big things that I was kind of questioning and concerning was, if you're going to be running Beal off this bench, why is Grayson Allen on this team? They play the same exact role for this squad. They're both that spark plug scorer. So if they're not going to make a move, why are we still doing that? And then to further up your point with the rotations and stuff like that versus that Portland game, I believe this is the game where Dunn got hurt. So it was a little bit difficult for this team to kind of play. And that was very, very sad. And yeah, 2 points combined from 3 starters is just unacceptable.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dunn, yeah, he did tweak his ankle. So we ended up seeing over 38 minutes from Bradley Beal, 34 minutes from Grayson Allen, and over 32 minutes from Royce O'Neal. And 21 plus minutes for Mason Plumlee, getting more time once again than Nick Richards. Let's see. So Monty Williams had a love affair with Landry Shamet. That's quite clear at this point. He had a strange fascination with him. And also, who was the guy? Abdul Nader, the Pyramid Poppy. He loved himself some Abdul Nader. I remember who he was injured for the entire playoffs. You go into the finals, or was it the Western Conference Finals? You start playing some Abdul Nader for no reason to show him that he still has a career. Frank Vogel, I don't know who was his fascination with. Maybe with a bull for a while, and because that has not obviously been replicated with Coach Bud, but Vogel kept trying the bull experiment a little bit, and then Coach Bud has a fascination with Mason Plumlee. Bruce, what does Mason Plumlee like? He's a fine backup. Why are we relying on him more than the starter? Why is he log jamming Oso and preventing him from getting onto the floor in some games? What does Mason bring that is so beneficial to this team?
A smooch to Budenholzer on the cheek before he goes in. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous at this point.
I like him. He's a fine player, but
I think he was signed to be the third big for this team. I think that's where, or with Oso Ighodaro, right? Because you figured Nurkic was going to be that starting center, and then you figured Mason, Bol, possibly even Oso would compete for that backup spot. But what you've seen with Mason Plumlee is him doing spin moves, trying to get baskets in, not scoring, missing rebounds, going through his hands, similar with Jusuf Nurkic, allowing players to box out, getting subbed in overtime and not being able to grab the rebounds for us when we need them. And Coach Budenholzer keeps going with him, and we'll get into this with some more games as well, because we saw it even last night with Mike Budenholzer playing Mason Plumlee and stuff like that. And it's just, I don't know what his strange fascination with him is. He's an older player as well, so like on a championship team, like you were saying, he'd be like a fringe backup big, maybe play like 8 to 10 minutes for you if you do need that interior sizing. And I wouldn't mind having him and Oso as those interior third bigs, one for defense and Mason and rebounding, one in offense and scoring and Oso if you had that second backup big. But the fact that we didn't, and they thought that Mason Plumlee was A-okay, is just very concerning, questioning. I don't understand what the direction of the front office really is if that's their plan.
Well, and I don't know if the time away from the game really changed Coach Bud's perspective, but I mean, early in the year, I remember he was running out a Twin Towers lineup with Mason and Oso out there, and sometimes Mason and I think Nurk were even playing out there together for a brief period. So he loves, Mason Plumlee is on a 1-year minimum expiring deal. It's not like we're like, oh, we're going to give you lots of playing time, so you hope to resign with it. Like, I mean, there's not going to be something in this down the road. So I just don't know. Maybe Mason's dating his daughter. I don't even know if Bud has a daughter, but if he does, I put more. If I was Caesars, I would put money that Mason's daughter. But yeah, over 21 minutes played. He's a good rebounder. Don't get me wrong. 12 rebounds in this game against the Trailblazers. 6 points. 4 assists. He's kind of. I feel like how to describe Mason at this point is he is less impressive than Nurkic, Oso, and Nick Richards in a lot of ways, but I feel like his floors are higher than a lot of those guys. So whereas I feel like Nick, more athletic, Oso, more athletic, Mason's floors of where those other guys might struggle, like Nick Richards, is still playing a little scattered sometimes, still kind of learning the systems. Oso isn't quite big enough yet. Maybe he's still a little undersized. Nurk, for example, just I still don't really. I was going to say like maybe Mason shoots the ball better, but I mean that's just not the case either. So I just feel like I don't know. Maybe I view Mason as a below average in just about every single category, but maybe those below averages are still better than where one of these other players might absolutely be awful in one category, if that makes any sense. Like he's worse than all of them, but some of them have even worse qualities in certain aspects of their game. And so Mason's floor overall average is basically higher. That's the only way I can explain it.
It seems like his ability to stay on the floor and his consistency to stay level with this team is a lot higher. And like you said, like has an easier floor of hitting, whereas Richards can be sometimes, a little bit too aggressive and might be a little bit sporadic, getting those foul trouble early, where I can kind of compare Plumlee to Luke Cornett for the Celtics, where he's just going to go in, do what you need him to do, and then come right out. You know what I mean? And in most cases, you hope Mason Plumlee can go in, do what he wants, and then come out. I think in less heightened role, it looks more impactful because we've seen Mason Plumlee. The one thing with him is when he plays these games, he might have a stint in the first half where he does really good, right? Where he looks solid. And then he comes out and then he goes in the second half and then he has that bad stint and everyone remembers the bad stint. They don't remember the good stint. And then he keeps getting played later and later in the game. Everyone's like, why is Mason Plumlee in here? But if you have Mason as like that tertiary big to kind of just throw in there for 5 to 8 minutes and then take him out, just if, we need that extra rebounding, throw him in there, that I think would be a little bit easier. And that's where I still don't understand why this Suns team didn't make any more moves at the deadline, trying to figure out these other pieces and holes, because even if you don't want to sell all on your draft capital, you have players on this roster that don't even play or got their first basically shine yesterday to kind of emerge through this lineup. So I don't necessarily know why they have those guys there if they're not going to be used.
Yeah, I like how you described it. To me, that is how I look at Mason. When he's on the floor and he plays at this point, like the majority of games, it seems like lately, I don't notice him on the floor until he does something wrong because he just doesn't do much.
Yep.
He reminds me of, if you remember when the Suns acquired Brian Grant, I think that was early in the 7 seconds or less era. But I just remember when they were like, the team was describing him, they were just like, interior defender, sets great screens, really a great screen setter. And I'm just like, that is such a small aspect to the game. Like, I mean, I know screens need to be set, but just like good rebounder, no. Shooter, no. Like rim protector, not really. There's screens though, man. Screens guys. Like to me, that would be like just being like, this guy's fast. Does he do anything else? He's so fast though. Like, So that's maybe Mason's just one hell of a screener. And these guys just are like, you know what? I just get a little bit more open when Mason's on the floor because of those screens. So that's what I'm going to go with. But as I mentioned, the Blazers got this win, and they were led by DeAndre Ayton, who went to the line. Of course he did. He averages like 1 free throw a game. In this game, he gets 8, knocking down 7 of 8 to lead his team with 25 points scoring and 20 rebounds. We already talked about the DeAndre Ayton revenge game. I guess he gets it twice here, helping secure the win in overtime. Was it just me, or did you kind of think that Booker was kind of pissed that he was losing to Da? There was a moment towards the end where they said it was out on Ayton or out on Booker, and Booker's like, no, it was definitely out on Da, and you see him like walking away barking, and you just see Da just like, what is this guy's problem? Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was just reading into it. Maybe it's just that one play, but you could to me, Booker did not want to lose to Ayton in any way.
Mm-hmm. And this was also the historic night, obviously, with Devin Booker breaking that record, which was absolutely great to see. And I'm very, very happy for him to be able to do that. But like we said, this Blazers team, unfortunately, got two better players in Ayton and Kamara than we did in the trade, looking back at it. And it just hasn't been able to help. And they've just been led by that defense by Kamara. And unfortunately for the Suns, it was too pesty, too disruptive for this offense. And they fell short in that overtime. They were luckily enough to get it to the overtime, but unfortunately lost it.
You know, it's funny because I saw somebody. He's a pretty big Twitter follow, big YouTube following. Brandon Aris, I think Aris. I forget exactly how it's named. I haven't seen much of his content, but I see a lot of his tweets. And he pointed out, that he claimed that the trading of Toumani Camara and DeAndre Ayton could go down as the worst trade in Suns history because it was for Nurk. And I thought, is everyone just forgetting Grayson Allen was a part of that deal? And he led the league in three-point shooting last year. He's 8th in the league this year, and that was after a slow start. And then Nasir Little, I don't know where he's at, but and I get that. But to me, I feel like people just forget about the Gray Wad of Phoenix, and they shouldn't because of that overtime three-point shot that he hit last night against the Jazz. But they're descended to overtime. But
yeah,
I'm not wrong, right? I mean, it's not the worst trade in franchise history, is it?
I was going to say, I don't think it's the worst trade in franchise history. I mean, you did give up on, I believe, a player in Ayton who they should have sold a little bit earlier, which like they could have gotten, I think, a little bit more value from when he wanted to go to the Pacers or wanted to go to a new team. I feel like that would have been a little bit of a better direction for this team. But besides that, I mean, Kamara was a throw-in. I know he played, I think, one preseason game before he got traded, or summer league game before he got traded.
I know it wasn't a single regular season minute.
Yeah, so he obviously there was some signs in there, but he wasn't expected to what they thought he was going to be. The Suns just, in my opinion, I think, evaluate with James Jones, and you guys kind of talked about it well, but he just evaluates the same position archetype, same type of player, and that's where the roster kind of has its faults, because you even saw in that game with the Utah Jazz, or not Utah Jazz, excuse me, the Blazers in overtime, where this closing lineup was Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, Booker, Beal. There's no center in there. It's 5 out the whole time, and Mason was just getting substituted in and out, and I don't know. I just think that rotation, a closing rotation, regardless if it's the Blazers or if it's the Nuggets, isn't going to be a closing rotation to win a game like that.
Well, and as I mentioned, I mean, it's not every game, but Kevin Durant has never been an elite rebounder, averaging around 7 to 8 a game tops. And so, that's what concerns me, is that we already know this team struggles to rebound, and if you rely on Kevin Durant to be the key, the rebounder in clutch time, you're going to give up some second shots, and that's going to be beyond frustrating in close games. But let's touch on another exciting game before we take a little break in the club. We went to and played. We played the Oklahoma City Thunder this week, just coming up short, 109 to 140. Hey, we were in it in that first half, surprisingly so. We went down 4 in the first quarter at the end of the first, and we were actually up going into halftime by 2 points. It was the third quarter where we went and scored 16 points to the Thunder's 43. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leading the Oklahoma City Thunder, all scores for that matter, with 50 points. There was just Bradley Beal had 25 off the bench. He led the Suns. But yeah, we were without Kevin Durant. I actually thought that was because Kevin Durant might have been, getting ready to be traded. But they said it was a little soreness and I think sore foot. So no Kevin Durant in this game. Instead, the Suns rolled out Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, Nick Richards, Tyus Jones to team up with Devin Booker. Booker had 19 points. Anything besides flush this game?
Yeah, basically the Suns were doing good, like you said. Then let up a 20-2 run in the third, scored their first points halfway through the third quarter on free throws. Just the Suns' kryptonite this season is the third quarter, and last year it was the Celtics' kryptonite, and I thought I escaped that. But I guess I'm just bringing it with me because the third quarter kryptonite for the Suns is here to strike. Because this season it's been awful. I've seen John post so many tweets of the cold streak, the hot streak by quarter and stuff like that. The third quarter, they're just absolutely atrocious. And I don't know what's going on in that locker room at halftime. I don't know what's being said to motivate them or unmotivate them, but it's clearly disastrous because it's not like this is just the first time or it's versus the Thunder, who are a good team. It's regardless of the team they play, the third quarter, a majority of the case, is going to be an awful quarter for the Phoenix Suns.
And that's kind of fascinating because I feel like the last handful of years we've talked about just a quarter weakness. So like last year we had trouble in the fourth quarter, which was interesting because the previous year or the 2 years prior, I forget which, but we were among the leading leaders. We were among the leaders in clutch time and clutch scoring with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. So it was kind of strange to see that. Now we're struggling with third quarters, but I remember, was it early with Chris Paul and Devin Booker? We struggled opening the games. We'd go down 20-8. And then we would just try and play catch up most of the time. And a lot of times, obviously, we were very successful when we did that. But it was just frustrating. It's like, wow, we shouldn't have to burn out Chris Paul to try and get back into these games. But yeah, whatever is happening, I don't know if these guys are sitting too much in chairs when they go in the locker room, if they need to, get like a standing desk type situation because they're just falling asleep when they go back there. But something has not worked this year. And it's just kind of fascinating to see how it just continues to play out, regardless of who's starting those second halves. It's so stark that you always seem to notice it because it just happens so often and to such an extreme way. So, yeah, not much else I can say.
Not much else.
Except I guess the only thing that I could think of, well, obviously, so my hope going into this was that we were going to, or I guess I should say, I was assuming we were going to beat the Blazers and we'd go on the little win streak and then maybe get some false hope going against the Thunder. But clearly, we're not ready to compete against any of the top teams. And so we're hoping to maybe beat up on some of these slightly above average teams and claw ourselves up a bit. But is there any chance we could beat the Thunder right now in the playoffs?
No, I think we could beat them in a regular season game, but in a playoff series or in a playoff series, no.
Yeah, I don't see it either. All right, let's go get wasted.
What's the name of that nightclub of yours again?
You talking about the Boom Boom Room?
Yeah, the Boom Boom Room. That's it. Yeah.
Bruce, now that I think about it, if you're going to be sticking around Suns Planet, we're going to have to actually get you into that club a little bit, get your legs moving. We're going to be we've gotten through the sad stuff this week. Maybe it depends how you feel about Jusuf Nurkic and the lack of getting things done at the trade deadline. But we got past the losses. That's the important thing. Let's turn this thing around. And actually, you know what? Let's just jump right into that trade stuff. So the Suns did send out Jusuf Nurkic and a first-round pick, 2026 first-round pick, to the Charlotte Hornets for Cody Martin, Vasilije Micic. We'll go with Micic. And a 2026 second-round pick. Bruce, what grade do you give this?
C.
Okay.
For a lot of reasons. I don't know why the Suns didn't offer Yusuf Nurkic for Nick Richards at first if they knew that the Hornets were going to take a center back. If Mark Williams was available, I don't know why they didn't test the waters with Mark Williams. And I believe before they made the trade for Yusuf or for Nick Richards, they still had that 2031 Suns first round pick before they had made that deal. So could you have attached that 2031 with some other pieces to get Mark Williams or to move off Yusuf Nurkic's contract? Maybe. But the only thing is, the bright side is that Yusuf Nurkic is no longer on this team. I said this earlier, but I would have traded him for a half of a cookie, a burnt cookie, because he was just not producing and not playing. Yes, it's not a slight on him. I think he'll be fine in Charlotte. It was just past the turning point where if the Suns are having their fourth highest player making $18 million not playing and not willing to play off the bench, then it's just time to go, regardless of the fact if he's more expirable and more tradable next season, because you got to try to make some moves to compete now. But if this was their only move, then it's still a little bit of a bad thing because they didn't fill their hole that they need.
Oh, Yusuf.
Here goes a flush, savage slam dunk, rebound with the sound of this welcome funk. Bosnian Beast.
And the Bosnian Beast is gone from the Valley. So I've said a lot about Yusuf. I was not really a Yusuf apologist, but I did think the Suns fans were putting way too much blame on the man over the last year plus. I think he was a standard, okay, mid-level center that was slightly overpaid, maybe for what he was, giving you. But I'm going to put more of the blame still on this coaching staff. The whole I don't have a relationship with Coach Bud. And then when Bud was asked about it, he's like, well, there's been conversations, but I understand why he feels that way. I still am kind of trying to parse through those words. You understand why he feels that way? How is that a response? Like, the guy says, I have no relationship with if I said I have no relationship with you, Bruce, and you're like, no, we've talked once or twice, but I understand why he feels like we don't have a relationship. Wouldn't you try and start that relationship? Like, if we were on the same team, you'd be like, maybe I should talk to this guy real quick, because I don't remember ever reading anything specifically that said Yusuf refused to come off the bench. He obviously, but his downfall from like, oh, kind of struggling this year. Bud wants him to shoot threes. He seems a little uncomfortable. He's kind of a playmaking center, but we don't really need that with Tyus out there. And then just all of a sudden, he takes a punch, gets suspended, and gets the flu, and he's out of the starting lineup, and it becomes the Emperor Palpatine, Star Wars brooding on the bench. And he tells us there's chaos in the locker room. I don't know. Was Nurkic a canary in the coal mine? Maybe like, is he signaling that there's something else? As I just went through my 12-year-old growth spurt right there again, is he signaling that there's something else wrong with this team, or is it just something that was a Nurkic deal? And do you put any blame on the coaching staff for not having that relationship with him?
So I think you make a valid point with the coaching staff, because it is a two-way street, right? It is Mike Budenholzer. It is Yusuf Nurkic. So one thing that I was kind of confused about with all this was, I'm pretty sure Mike Budenholzer went to Europe to train with Yusuf Nurkic over the summer and work on his game and do stuff like that. So I don't understand how that relationship could kind of be like ruptured that quickly. If he just gotten hired, he traveled and went and talked to him, and then for 2 months he's not talking to him. So they just talked over the summer, and then he played the first week, and then was just like, all right, now we're not talking anymore. Like, I don't necessarily know. I think Nurkic might have blown out proportion a little bit, but like you said, Mike Budenholzer, if he says, I understand how he feels like that, wouldn't you want to work on that relationship? Wouldn't you want to try to build that relationship? And I think a lot of Suns fans, like, we saw Yusuf Nurkic come off the bench, and he wasn't the greatest, right? But we didn't see him come off the bench with Nick Richards in the lineup. We never got to see what those two looked like together. And if we got to see what they looked like together, maybe we would have a little bit more better interior defense, a little better rebounding. I think Yusuf Nurkic at this point of his career is a backup center. He just he doesn't have the ability to be a starter. I think he's going to thrive best as a backup. And the only difficult part about that is that he was making that $18 million. I think if he was making a $10 to $14 million contract, the Suns would have been able to move off of him way before the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. And I think Yeah, as Michael P talks about, I remember we covered this on the show that he was down, 10, 15 pounds training hard because he wanted to get out and run a little bit more, get out and shoot those 3-point shots. He was getting ready to work hard for this team. And then just the fall from glory, man. And just like, reading a little bit more about the situation, he's always been a starter in this league. And so all of a sudden, when he sees Mason Plumlee getting more minutes than him, when they see that he's being shopped and, we're trading away players to get Nick Richards. I think Nurk was being a baby. I mean, that whole I kept joking. I was like, worst flu ever, man. Worst flu ever. That flu was just taking him out. And then he had to miss more games because he's recovering his body from said flu. That's that's right up there with the Luka rumors. I was hearing that they were concerned about his conditioning when he pulled his calf. He was apparently coming back in at 260 pounds and stuff like this, and just getting on that Zion Williamson diet all of a sudden. And they're that he should have been back sooner, but because of his weight gain while he was staying off his calf, they're like, oh, he needs to take off more time to try and get in more shape. It kind of reminds me. I remember there was a story way back when Goran Dragic came into the league. It was kind of during the beginning of the kind of European player dominance, but Dirk Nowitzki was in the league and stuff like this, where some European players were coming in and just caving into an American diet as if it was the greatest thing ever, grabbing chicken sandwiches on the way home from practice, and then not realizing you still have to work out after you eat this stuff if you're going to stay in game shape. So, it's frustrating to see that I feel like, because it was such I don't think Nurk was going to get better, but I feel like he hadn't dropped off that badly yet, that Mason Plumlee needs to be absorbing all those minutes. And as you point out, we didn't get to see him with Nick Richards. And there's been a lot of games where we are sitting back saying, gosh, I wish somebody would have gotten that rebound. And Jusuf Nurkic will perhaps sadly go down as the Suns' leading rebounder or holding the rebound record for a single game with 30 against I think it was Oklahoma City Thunder last in a loss. So Jusuf Nurkic, I salute you. Maybe a little bit of a baby type situation at the end, but with the amount of coaches that this team has, actually, I shouldn't even say it like that, because I can't compare the number of coaches, but I feel like you've got a Brent Berry, a James Posey, a Fizdale, who's been here for a bit now, Coach Bud. James Jones is the player GM. How is somebody not getting in front of Nurk? And maybe Nurk just realized, hey, I'm gonna go AWOL now, and that's certainly been it too, where he's just you know what, I think I'm a starter. I'm not going to accept any of these deals and let them try and butter me up. And that's the way it looks in the end.
Exactly. We'll have to see how he performs out in Charlotte. Now, they obviously don't have a center, so I think he's going to look a little bit better than what he presents as. But since they don't have that other center, since they only have Diabate and Taj Gibson, he could get played off that court as well if he isn't if he is what he actually was that the Suns did see on the Suns, and it's not just, it doesn't work in this system. You know what I mean?
But Cody Martin coming in, who had spent his entire career in Charlotte, and Vasile. It was kind of funny. I heard it was on the Super Duper Pod, and was I think Boyd from Aussie Suns fans Vasile's a turnstile on defense, and but he had some offensive firepower. And I looked at his numbers, and it's 37% shooting, and I was like, I don't know if he's an offensive weapon at all. I saw something though that he's got a decent assist to turnover ratio. I think, as I mentioned, he's a slightly bigger guard. I don't know. Is he bad on defense? I'll be honest. I'm more nervous that the Suns have just decided to form an alliance with the Charlotte Hornets this year and say, we'll take your bad players if you take our bad players, and let's see where we can get with this.
I think that's kind of hilarious to look at it, but that light, because honestly, the Suns only made, besides that trade, the draft one, they only made trades with the Hornets this year. So it's crazy that the Hornets were the only team to really pick up the phone and answer James Jones to kind of get this done. With Micic and Martin, I think it's a little bit weird. I don't mind Martin. I think he's going to be a solid wing to add in this rotation. And with losing Josh Okogie, I know he didn't get many minutes in this team. That's why he was moved off. But the Suns still need another defensive piece off this bench, a guy that can kind of come in and play that wing position. And he fits that more of a wing as he's a little bit bigger than Josh Okogie. So I do like that. And then Micic, I don't know. I'm kind of confused. Once again, we were complaining. We talked about earlier about Tyus, Monte not even getting minutes.
The only thing I see is that he's bigger than Tyus and Monte. But I don't know if he's making fun of players either.
He's another point guard. Like, I don't know. And we still don't have, like, and we have Mason Plumlee as our backup center, yet we have 8 guards on our team. So I don't, that's where I got confused, because when I saw this trade go down, I initially thought, okay, this is the first domino. Now we'll see Tyus. Now we'll see Grayson. Then we'll get that backup big. And then we'll be able to kind of move past into this limelight here for the second half of the season. But then when Gambo said that was the only move, I think that's what made Suns fans a little bit more frustrated, was that they saw this move, saw something get fixed, but they didn't see the repercussions after that move. Because you look at this roster too, and this is something else. Coach Budenholzer, we've heard the complaints of him playing certain guys, not giving them enough minutes, or certain guys getting played out of the rotation. Now he has 2 extra guys to work because Nurkic wasn't even on the team. He was only running a 13-man rotation before. Now he has Micic and Martin in there. So a 15-man rotation. Some guys may, once they get integrated, maybe they don't get playing minutes when they come here, or someone else's minutes get shortened, or someone else gets taken out the lineup, and that's going to be something to see.
Yeah, trying to take anything good from the Hornets is tough, because there's a reason why they have struggled year in and year out for quite a while. But I mean, I guess credit, Nick Richards. There was a moment, I think I shared this with Kevin Salute, actually, was that we'll see real quick whether or not taking a potentially not great player. I don't want to say Nick Richards is a bad player, but taking a player from a bad team and putting him on a slightly more competitive team, does that upscale them kind of like taking an old video game console, but putting it on a 8K television? Does that upscale the video game system at all? And I think we've seen that with Nick Richards. He's been underwhelming at times. We've had to turn back to Mason Plumlee a few times. But I think Nick has also surprised me in a lot of ways. And so, I feel that so far we've won that trade, the Josh Okogie trade. Nothing against Josh. I liked having Josh on this team, but what we needed was somebody more like a Nick Richards, who isn't as much as we would hope, but he is better than what we had. And so we'll see. Maybe Cody Martin can help. It'll be interesting with a Grayson, a Royce O'Neal, a Cody Martin. Are we going to play good defense? I'm not quite sure we're there yet. But, these guys are all listed at, Ryan Dunn. These guys are all listed as pretty good point of attack defenders. So we'll see. Maybe not as much Grayson anymore, but Dunn for sure. And Cody Martin was kind of the defensive stopper for Charlotte Hornets. And as we saw, as many people have seen, Charlotte doesn't stop people. So we'll see. It's a 5-man game. So, you can't just have, it's like when the Suns just had PJ Tucker out there and it's like, all right, PJ will lock him down, totally forgetting that the other 4 guys also have to do their part, or else it doesn't really matter in the end. So, no, I gave it a D-. I was a little disappointed. And I think, and as I mentioned this, it was more that the situation, I think, when Nurkic should never have gotten to the point that it got to. I think there should have been some work behind the scenes to kind of prevent something like that from falling off, because I think in the end his trade value did tank. I would have probably almost, I'm still kind of leaning towards it. I think keeping him on board, trying to save that relationship, and then going into next year with him on an expiring deal may have been beneficial. But I have since read and there's different articles on it, but I did get confirmation on that super duper megapod that Cody Martin is on a non-guaranteed contract next year, and Vasili's on a team option. So it's basically these guys won't be on the team next year, right? Or if either of them are, they're coming back on minimum contracts, is my guess. So it's really we're getting off that contract to try and get some flexibility going into next year. Is that how you understand it?
Yes, and I kind of tweeted something out similarly as well that night versus the night of the deadline. I was up super late coming up with all these theories for the Suns, trying to figure out how to solve this team, right? And my ultimate theory was trading Jusuf Nurkic away this season with one of those picks to get, I said Larry Nance, but a player or two players that could be expiring next season. So you could get off that $18-19 million right now, because we know the Phoenix Suns need to drop below the second apron to be able to make moves, to be able to do stuff, to have the best stuff, to be able to be creative. So
and to protect future picks. Is that right?
Yes, as well. So with the $28 million hold right now, it's a little bit difficult. So if you move off Jusuf Nurkic's $19 million, then you save around 10. If you traded Tyus, you'd save around 3. You trade Grayson Allen. I wrote about this on Brightside, but I thought Obi Toppin would have been a nice little fit as an athletic guy for this.
You do love yourself some Obi Toppin, man.
I do, and I think he would have been
like
perfect...
Obi Toppin. Like I think Patrick Ewing should be coaching in this league.
But just those small little cut saving moves, and then next season I think we have 6 or 7 veteran minimums on this team at the moment right now. So all of those are gone. So yeah, your roster would be thin, right? You're looking at a roster of next year Royce, Dunn, Oso, Richards, Booker, Kevin Durant, and Beal under roster at this very moment. But that's 7 guys. And if you look to move Beal still, if you want to keep Kevin Durant, try to go into that offseason, you have the flexibility of being a first apron team to where you can take multiple contracts back. Yeah. You can take more money back than what you're sending out in the deal as well. So if you needed to take on a bag contract, say not a Ben Simmons 40 million level, but
he's getting bought out. So
exactly, but someone of that level next year, then sure, like a PJ Tucker this season, like you take that contract on just to get off of the no trade clause. I think that's perfect. I think the problem isn't Bradley Beal. The problem is the fit with Bradley Beal, but the main problem with Bradley Beal is the no trade clause, because he would have already been moved if that was the case.
Yeah, and I'll ask you a question. Maybe you have the answer, maybe not. I'm just curious. But so do we have to be? I've heard a lot about, like, does this jeopardize future draft picks if we stay over the second apron? And that's true. But do we just have to come down underneath the second apron by a certain date, and then we can go back over it to kind of reset that clock? Because it's if you're over it a certain length of time or a certain multiple seasons in a row, I think it is, like, do we just need to get under it, and then we could go get a bunch of minimum contracts, fill the rest of the roster up, and maybe go slightly over it? Or is it at any point in the year, if you go over it, that's considered a second apron year?
So I don't necessarily know off the top of my head, but you are right. If you do consecutive years, I believe it is 2 or 3 consecutive years in the second apron, then you lose your first round pick, or your first round pick gets sent to the end of the draft. So even if you have the overall pick, you get the 30th pick or whatever. Mm-hmm. So for the Phoenix Suns, I don't necessarily know, but I would think that they would probably want to drop underneath that apron for 1 year at least, to find the pieces and find the tools, and then maybe they jump in the second apron when they make another trade or something like that in a season or two.
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, that is the thing that did not take place. It centered around one of the best to ever do it.
They go to Kevin Durant. Out to Durant. Here's his 3.
Yes, the easy money sniper was getting, I've heard a lot of wordsmithing going on by the talking heads, by those who would know. Were they shopping him? No, they were taking calls on him, though. Does he feel betrayed? No, he was involved. He knew they were hearing conversations. Does he internalize that and sulk, or is he kind of okay because he was informed the entire length of the process? But this is the big one to me. The supposed stuff, and this was confirmed by Shams Charania, was that in the deal for that was going to include the Miami Heat and the Golden State Warriors, the Suns would have acquired let's even just give it the minimum. Let's say 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a couple of pick swaps, because they're all plural. We just don't know exactly how many were being offered. But let's say 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 pick swaps, and we would have ended up with Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kuminga as well. Had Kevin Durant thought, I could go back to Golden State, team up with Steph Curry again and give it another shot. He apparently said, I don't like it. And Golden State said, well, if he doesn't like us, we don't like this deal. We're out. Bruce, I talked about this at length. I think you send out Kevin Durant, you start that retooling process. I think a Butler and Kuminga could have made the Suns better this year. And then at least we also have additional picks coming in to, give us some more ammunition for the future as well. What do you think about this deal? Would you have done it? And where do you fall on if KD didn't want to go somewhere, should you or should you not trade him?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to be on the other side of the spectrum. I would not do this trade. As we've seen with Jimmy Butler, the one thing that happened immediately after was traded was he signed a $60 million extension. And I feel like that extension would have came with the Phoenix Suns as well. What's up, King Nacho? How you doing? But
there's 2 things I know about King Nacho. He likes himself some Bruce, and he hates himself some Bradley Beal. So.
Yes, he does. But with this Suns team, I kind of see them, if they trade for Butler, they have 2 untradeable contracts going into the future, right? You have Jimmy Butler's untradeable $60 million in a few years, and you have Bradley Beal's no trade clause. I don't think any of those guys are going to want that team. Booker would be frustrated that you traded his best friend and favorite player for a guy that was wanted by Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, but isn't here for when Kevin Durant is here. I do admit that getting Jonathan Kuminga and getting the first round capital is nice, but personally, I don't see Jonathan Kuminga turning into a Kevin Durant-esque type of player. So if I'm the Suns front office, if I traded the Twins and all that future capital to push for a championship for Kevin Durant, I'm only trading Kevin Durant for a player. I'm only trading Kevin Durant for a player that will get me to the finals.
How many finals has Kevin Durant gotten us to?
0, but Kevin Durant and Booker in that first half season that they did play before Bradley Beal did get here looked solid. And I think that if you don't have that $50 million Bradley Beal contract, and if you look around the league, you look at a team like the Celtics who had, who have their 2 stars, but have some other guys that are capable of making less money around them to compete. I think if the Suns had a roster like that, or very similar to that with some other pieces, instead of a $50 million contract, if they had that split up, it would be a little bit easier for them to make moves and to contend with Kevin Durant and Booker.
It's funny, looking back to that, I mean, he showed up. I remember we were so excited to see him go, and then he slipped on the court and rolled his ankle, and he was out for 10 games. But it was a second round exit against the Nuggets. I'm trying to remember. Do you recall who was the 5th starter on that team? I mean, we had Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton. Who was our 5th guy at the time?
In 2022, was Craig on the roster still at that point?
Torrey Craig? Was it him? That sounds good. That sounds like right? Because I know we sent out Crowder, we sent out McHale, we sent out Cam Johnson. I know we had Thad Young, but he wouldn't have been starting. I feel like it had to be another forward, right? Because it would have been Paul and Booker as the guards. No, Crowder got traded to the Nets and then ended up, I think, in the Bucks, King Nacho. I'm trying to think who would have been the 5th guy in those playoff series. They were obviously so good that we remember them. Well, either way, it didn't work. And then obviously last year, the first round playoff sweep. So you mentioned obviously some of the problems with trying to trade a Jimmy Butler type deal, and you're not as high on Kuminga. But do you think the Suns are going to, or maybe even should? No, it wouldn't have been Cam, because Cam was traded to the Nets as well, Nacho. Yeah, he was part of that. So it was McHale, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder were sent out. That's gonna bug me, and it's gonna come up with like a totally random name at some point too. But oh well. Do you? I'm gonna make a bold prediction here for you. But it was not Landry Shamet and Michael P. Do not speak his name on this show. No. Here's my bold forecast for you, Bruce. Let's say this team only makes the play-in tournament, and even if we survive the play-in tournament, it's a first-round exit. Do you shop Kevin Durant then, or do you re-sign him and shop him? Do you just shop him, or do you re-sign him and say, "Hey, we got Booker, we got Durant. We'll come down underneath that second apron and try and rebuild around those two"?
So in a perfect world, I'm going to take a bite out of the optimistic cookie with Suns Geek and say that they keep Kevin Durant. The front office talks to Kevin Durant. They smooth this over through the offseason, and they say, we know you want to stay in Phoenix. We want to keep you here. Booker wants to stay here. We have more flexibility to move Beal now. We're also dropped underneath the first apron, so it's also easier for us to get a deal done. We're going to find a deal to get Bradley Beal gone. But do I think that's going to be the reality? No. I genuinely think that with the Phoenix Suns not talking to Durant before shopping him and not making this kind of known and just taking the calls and then almost pushing through a trade without even talking him, it's already ruptured the relationship enough to where even no matter how much persuasion, or even if this team with this roster makes the Western Conference Finals somehow, that you're going to be able to convince Kevin Durant to be able to want to stay long-term. I think already in his mind now for this half of the season, he's going to be not envisioning himself, but picturing where he could help out and contribute with these other teams, specifically if the Suns are towards the bottom. And I think that by not having this conversation with Durant from the start and from the get-go kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to ensure that, because he wanted to stay in Phoenix. He wanted to be here. And I get taking calls. I get listening to offers, but you don't almost strike a deal before telling him, and then he's the person that has to nix it.
But isn't that that's kind of empowering though too, right? Like he does not have a no trade clause, but he said, I don't like it. And they said, you got it, Kevin. We did make you a promise. We're not going to do it. I guess it kind of depends. I mean, if he pulls a Yusuf Nurkic, he'll say, chaos, chaos. And he will say, I'm not signing an extension. I will only do it and I will only accept to be traded to these teams, like he kind of did to get out of Brooklyn. But if that's so, yeah, I guess let me back up. So that was the cookie of optimism, or did you? Because then my cookie of optimism, the reality of negativity.
Yes, yeah. So my optimistic piece is that he will stay, and I truly think that like it could be done. It very well could be done, and I would love for it to happen. That's what. Because Durant has said he wants to stay in Phoenix, and I think that there's a potential, like, if this team, like you said, makes the play-in or makes the playoffs, maybe gets a couple wins in a playoff series or something like that, that you can still convince Kevin Durant to want to stay. But I don't know. And to go to your second point, like of holding him, I get it that he doesn't have a no trade clause. So like, obviously, like if it's a business, you think you want to get better, you want to move off Kevin Durant. But to kind of second it, if you trade your star player, I know this was talked about in the Mega Pod, but if you trade your star player without him knowing that you're trading your star player, how does that look for other free agents? And how does that make Devin Booker feel? Because I feel like Devin Booker at that point would want to be traded by next season, at least already, if that's the case. I think if you try to repair this relationship, or even if you give Durant the option in the offseason where you get more flexibility, more teams are interested, it's a little bit easier. Possibly could get, Houston or Memphis or Minnesota involved. I know they were interested to get some younger draft capital. Then maybe you can convince Devin Booker you can retool this team around him. But I don't know.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, it's all going to fall down to exactly what you were touching on here, trading Bradley Beal. Mm-hmm. And man holds all the cards, as has been discussed ad nauseum. He'll hold all the cards next year, and he'll hold all the cards the following year. So that's going to be the big problem that I see with this, just because, let's see. Oh, let's stop that. And let's present another screen. There we go. Perfect. Talk a little bit about, might as well give the man his drop. I still like this guy.
My name is
Now, I know King Nacho does not like Bradley Beal, so let me just go out to say I think as a person, he comes across as quite nice. I think as a player, I think he's still very much above average, a good player, maybe not a great player, but still a very good player. But let's be honest, I don't hate anything about Bradley Beal except his no-trade clause. But I also can't blame the guy for being like, you know what, my family's here. We moved here. I'd prefer, you know what, it's wintertime. It's February. Arizona's nice. Let's just stick this out. And so that's my concern is that if we're hoping that, and I'm not saying that trading Beal is not the answer. I think it's like I've seen so much of these fans like on Suns Twitter being like, boo this man, make him feel not welcome. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's, hey, we've got to be nice to Kevin Durant so that players want to come here. And then it's like, except Bradley, you suck. Like, I don't know if we can do both at the same time. Try and like boo one person to leave and then like be like, whatever you want, Kevin, we'll do. But yeah, that's a situation. Like, I think what kind of concerned me, and maybe it was just, I don't know how true it was, but everything we kept hearing about these supposed trade rumors with Bradley Beal were nobody's asked him. Nobody's talked to his agent. His agent said, no, nobody's even talking to us about waiving this yet. But we all knew that he would have to waive it, right? So do you think it was just they were just kind of BSing us a little bit and they were actually having those conversations, or do you think it was something else?
I 100% think they were having those conversations. I think any report that you saw that no team was interested in Bradley Beal or Bradley Beal wasn't interested in waiving his no trade clause is a lie. I think that if a perfect opportunity for Bradley Beal was presented to where he's not coming off the bench and he's playing on a team in an area that he would have liked, he would have waived his no trade clause. The unfortunate part is with the no trade clause in this Phoenix Suns team is they're stuck with it, because if they didn't have this no trade clause, they could have shipped him to Atlanta, Detroit, Utah, Brooklyn, Washington, wherever they wanted in a 3-team deal to get Jimmy Butler, and the deal would have been done weeks ago. Now, the point that you brought up as well, I don't think any fan should be booing Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal feels comfortable here. He wants to stay in Phoenix. That's totally fine. We should not be going and disrespecting our players because they're our entertainment. They obviously have lives as well, but we're appreciating them. We're paying our money to go see them, so we should go respect them when we're in the arena. But the one thing that a lot of Suns fans, including myself, would have a hard time understanding is if you traded Kevin Durant, right? If you went through with that trade because Bradley Beal didn't want to leave and didn't waive his no trade clause. If you're Bradley Beal, how do you go back to playing for that team with the fans and stuff like that? That's my only question, because if we had to trade Kevin Durant and it was because Bradley Beal didn't want to leave and he was the one that had the no trade clause and they both wanted out, then I think a lot of fans would have been frustrated. So I think that saves us a little bit at least.
Well, yeah, and just to double down on it, and I'm sure you probably agree, Bruce. I'm with Gavin from Aussie Suns fan on this too. Don't say anything in front of his wife. Leave the man's kid alone if he wants to see his dad play the game. He's gotten moved to the bench and he's still playing hard. He's not pulling a Nurkic. It's not like he's just sitting there brooding like, I'm going to make you guys pay me for 3 years and I'm not even going to help you guys try and win games. Like, he's still getting out trying to help us win games. But this was the risk we took, and we knew we were taking that risk when we traded for the man. I think he will be more easily tradable in the offseason. As you point out, we'll have a little bit more flexibility. But then teams are also going to just look at it like somebody's going to lose the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, right? And some of those like top picks. Somebody's going to get that 4th pick, 5th pick, 6th pick, and just be like, oh, shoot, we're not our 7th pick overall is not going to get us to the playoffs. Give us a Bradley Beal contract. We're going to have a tough road for the next year or two. It might not be in the offseason. It might be the next trade deadline. But I think that his contract will be tradable. The question is, will he want to go? And I think he believes that he's a starter still. What I found kind of fascinating is that the Hawks and the Wizards, according to this NBA Central, and Wendy on ESPN talked about that they were interested in taking on Bradley Beal. I think it would have been a terrible defensive backcourt in Atlanta with Trae Young, but it would have been interesting to see. What's fascinating is I think the Wizards know that even if they do get a Cooper Flag, that they're still a long ways away. And they were just like, you know what? And then we talked about this a little bit backstage. decision to acquire a Chris Middleton. The Wizards are having a hard time developing that young talent they have. And so I think they're thinking kind of what the Rockets did when they spent money to get like a Dylan Brooks and a Fred VanVleet was, hey, let's not do that old Phoenix Suns model of being bad for 10 years and just hoping our high draft picks eventually figure it out, Dragon Bender, Marquise Chris. But let's bring in some guys that are competitive, that want to win, maybe don't push us all the way over, but can at least instill a sense of discipline, pride, teach these guys how to grind, teach these guys how to take care of their bodies, and kind of help lead these young players. Because right now, if you're a Wizards player, you're just like, man, I get paid a low contract, because I'm a rookie. I'm supposed to go out there and entertain a crowd in DC that hopes we lose almost at this point. Can't get too excited about that. But Bradley Beal going in there, just continuing to build records and become like a franchise like guy that's always just put it together for that franchise would be kind of interesting to see. So I don't know. I don't put any blame on Bradley at this point for doing what he's doing. But are you intrigued with shopping him in the offseason and seeing something like this to the Wizards or Hawks?
For sure, 100%. And I think you brought up a valid point with we were talking about backstage. The Wizards is a perfect comparison to the Rockets from a couple seasons ago, and that's kind of what I made in my head as well. Where you add these veterans to help out this young core team, because the Wizards are a team this season that weren't playing through Kuzma or any of their other guys. They were playing through those rookies to see what they could grow to. So I really like that comparison. But yeah, I'd obviously consider shopping Bradley Beal. I think the only way to keep Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on this roster and to keep pushing for a championship like Matt Ashbia wants and like the fans actually want is to move off of Bradley Beal's contract. And it doesn't have to be for another standout star. I don't necessarily think that the Suns needed Jimmy Butler. They didn't need another star player. They just needed what Jimmy Butler presented: defense, vocal ability, and the switchability to play in this starting lineup. And that's what the Suns need at that wing position. They need wing defenders. They need guys that can step up and take command. So even if you moved a player like Bradley Beal to the Wizards or to the Hawks for 2 or 3 guys, like look at the Hawks, for example, right? You look at next season, maybe a sign and trade with Clint Capella, bringing him in as a center at around, $15 million, and then looking at a guy making maybe $20 million, right? And for the Suns, they can, I believe, when they're not in the when they're in the first apron, they don't have to take back exactly how much they send out either. So it makes it a little bit easier. Maybe they can drop a little bit more as well, which will help out the Phoenix Suns in rebuilding this roster and pursuing in free agency, because next year's free agency class isn't the biggest, isn't the brightest, but it has a lot of veteran guys, a lot of guys that you could bring into this culture. And if they want to build a championship culture with a winning team in Phoenix, and we've seen free agents want to go there to play with Durant and Booker, I think if you move off Beal's contract in the offseason, get those guys in a trade, possibly a Clint Capella and another wing, for example, add them to this roster, and then really retool on the fly with some of these guys with some free agent signings. I think the Suns could put themselves in even a better position than fans thought going into this offseason, which could let us down once again, but could, give us a nice little surprise.
Yeah, I think the new structure with the second apron and all this that the league kind of set up, it's going to be interesting because I thought for a while it's really going to gut those kind of middle of the road contracts, but maybe in a way it'll kind of lift up those kind of lower tier contracts as well, where instead of taking just a minimum contract, you'll get a $5 million contract a year or a 7 or 8. I mean, we saw Josh Okogie get his contract inflated to become something a little bit more tradable. But I think the idea of let's do a super big three max contracts, let's go, it's just not going to really work. I mean, Boston got in at the right time to do what they did. The Suns, tried it, and then the rules changed, and now they're kind of stuck with it. We can't keep rolling out we have 3 max, and then we'll just go sign minimum contracts, because there's going to be those guys that are not worth a max, but definitely want to get paid $10 million, $12 million, $15 million that we won't be able to afford unless we get some of this flexibility. We're already a little over time, and we didn't even talk about some of the best stuff. And so let's just jump right into this win over the Utah Jazz. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, a comeback victory. And the Suns win 135-127 in overtime thanks to the heroic shot from this man to cause it all.
I mean, can you be scary? Oh, I know you're asking me. Can it be scary? What do you think of this?
Grayson Allen.
Grayson Allen with the deep 3-point shot. Well, not deep, but with the jumping away from the basket, I'll put it that way. Off balance 3-point shot to force overtime against the elite Utah Jazz, who are 12-38 now. We got the win, and we did it without Kevin Durant and without Bradley Beal. And we don't have to touch on it for too long, but yeah, Devin Booker led the team, 47 points, 11 assists. Nick Richards, 12 and 14. And then, Utah Jazz were playing good players. Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, and Walker Kessler are still out there. So what was your takeaway from this game?
So Booker played fantastic, like you said. They were winning this game for a lot and then almost lost it there, but Grayson kind of saved us at the end, which was nice. But I think the main takeaway from this game was what Coach Budenholzer did, which was surprising.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Bol get some minutes, and not only did Bol get some minutes, but he played really good in those minutes as well. And Budenholzer, after the game, I think had a quote where he said that he went to Bol because they needed size with guys like Durant out of this lineup and not having Yusuf Nurkic, which I like to see. And Bol has not only been a fan favorite from this team, but also a player that a lot of fans have wanted to see more of. When Nurkic was benched, he wasn't getting any playing time, and a lot of fans were kind of confused on that. I get it, he's a raw talent, but I didn't necessarily see the need of re-signing him and having him for extra injury perseverance if we're not even going to throw him in there when we are injured and beaten up. So I'm glad that he got run, and I'm hoping to see Bol get some more integration with this team, because if Budenholzer is going to be shaking some things up, I think this change could help.
Well, and he also started playing Monty Morris, who I thought disappeared from the Valley for a little while. Monty Morris came in getting just under 15 minutes, chipping in 5 points, a couple of assists. Damian Lee, a Dame Lee appearance, and it wasn't garbage minutes, is a shock. Over 5 minutes in this game. But as you mentioned, obviously, there was a demigod that met with Coach Bud, and she said, choose the destructor. And he said this one.
It's Bol.
A Bol experience that wasn't in garbage time. Bol comes in for just over 24 minutes, scoring 12 points, 5 of 8 shooting. Was a plus 10 overall, 3 rebounds, an assist, 3 blocks. I'm not going to say he's good. He impressed me last year enough so that I had to apologize. He has underwhelmed me enough so far that I'm not going to re-apologize to him for being tough on this year. But I will say this, Bud, finally, I don't know, man. Like, thank God you're finally like being like, who else is on this team that I can like at this point, there's no benefit to losing games. Find a way to win. The Suns did it last night. It wasn't pretty. It was against the Utah Jazz. But as I mentioned, the Jazz were – I mean, it's not like they were pulling guys. Walker Kessler, 38 minutes. Collins, almost 39. Lauri, over 39 minutes. I know it's an overtime game, but those are guys that should be – I mean, they're going to be in the league for quite a while. Those are 3 good guys that I think a lot of Suns fans were hoping to acquire at some point. All 3 of them even. So we got the win. That's the important thing. Maybe Bud realizes that he doesn't have to be a Coach D'Antoni and just be like, no, 8-man rotation. I don't ever deviate from it. It's going to work at some point.
I'm hoping that the front office definitely said something about that, like divvying up this rotation, giving guys more minutes, giving guys more play. Because you brought up Damian Lee and Monte Morris as well. Monte Morris had a fantastic December, I believe, and they got shafted all of January. Didn't even play, so I don't understand what that was really with. Mm-hmm. It was kind of with the shifting of that lineup, but I don't know why Monte was taken out of it. And then Damian Lee, obviously a guy that the Suns gave a contract for because he was injured last year, wanted him to have another opportunity. I don't think he has that much life left in him, but we haven't even seen his life besides garbage minutes. So how could you really evaluate his game if we don't even get to see him play?
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, real quick, it wasn't a pretty week, but it was a week. Who is your Shazam player of the week and why?
Devin Booker, 100%. Devin Booker has been that man for this Phoenix Suns team, as we all know it over this recent stretch. I know that he did not make an all-star game, but the Western Conference is very star-stacked, and Devin Booker, to his standards, had a little bit of a slow start to the year, but not at the end of this year, as Devin Booker has been on a roll. Last night was absolutely dominant, and his last 5 has been really, really explosive for this Phoenix Suns team, and is really, really showcasing why he is the true definition of a Phoenix Sun, specifically in that Blazers game when he passed up the ball to take the game-tying shot to go to overtime and gave it to Royce O'Neal. True definition of what Devin Booker represents as a Phoenix Sun, and he is my player of the week.
Ooh, I love it. No, yeah. Quick. I mean, as we talked about, it was a 1-3 week. It wasn't pretty, but 37 points against the Portland Trail Blazers, followed up by 34 points, followed up by 19 points against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Definitely not his best game, but I mean, not a horrid game. Well, I mean, it wasn't a great shooting game. It wasn't a good game in general, but he was the best player on the team in that game. And then the win against the Jazz last night, 47 points, 11 assists. He's definitely been playing superbly well, I feel like, in 2025 since that calendar swung over, maybe even started a little bit in December. So, I am totally with you on the Devin Booker Shazam Player of the Week. Real quick, the fun is not over. We've got a game tonight against the Denver Nuggets. And I don't know if Beal or Durant will be available. Have you heard yet?
I have not heard yet.
So keep an eye on that, sports fans. Then we've got the Memphis Grizzlies on TNT on the 11th, followed by the Houston Rockets on the 12th. And that would be it before you see us and before we go to Argentina for a Suns Planet Visits episode. So Nuggets, Grizzlies, Houston Rockets. Predictions.
So I'm going to go 1-2 just because I feel like the Suns will pull one out. But unfortunately, Suns fans, with no moves being made and the Suns having the hardest strength of schedule for the second half of the year, it is going to be very, very bleak looking at some of these games. I feel like the Suns will get lucky. We'll be able to pull some big wins against some of these younger teams, maybe a Rockets or a Grizzlies, because they do have that inexperience. Maybe a guy like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker can take over. But unfortunately, those teams are just, better constructed as a team and, look like a team when they're on the court compared to the Phoenix Suns. So it's going to be very difficult for this team to get some big wins against some tough opponents this week.
Well, I love the Suns Fever must be eating that same positive cookie that you and the Suns Fever found down on a 3 and a big 0, 3-0 for Suns Fever. The realist has been plaguing me all year. I'm going to say 0-3. This is I don't think I've called for a winless week yet this year. I am finally going hard in on this one. The dismantling of us by the Oklahoma City Thunder, the dismantling of us by the Cleveland Cavaliers. We are not ready for top talent yet. And with Beal and Durant maybe out, and we saw this early in the year when we're missing any of the big three, and especially a Kevin Durant or a Booker, we have problems. So obviously, I hope for the best. Let's go 3-0. Let's shock the world. Let's show them the Suns are back. The sports bet analyst in me is going to say 0-3 and do not expect the Suns to cover. But that's where I'm at. And prove me wrong, Suns. Bring me back to the fold. I want to come back into the fold. Make me excited about this team again. But it's going to be I love it. Bull starts 35-20. Make it happen. Give it to us. Yeah, I'm here for it. So, Bruce, where can the folks follow you?
All right, so you guys can follow me over on at Twitter or Blue Sky at Bruce Velez, or I do a bunch
You're
of
a
NBA
Blue
work.
Sky guy now?
I have both. Yes, I post more on Twitter.
What about Truth Social? It's a really growing platform. Lots of people there. Many people tell me I'm really fantastic on that platform. So
you can find me over on there, and you can check out my work for Brightside and Last Word for writing on the Suns, and Celtics and Suns Digest as well on YouTube.
All right. Well, and you can follow me at Fallen Founder. Please be sure to do exactly what King Nacho said he did. Subscribe just because you saw that Bruce Velez on this episode, and be sure to check us out next week. We're going traveling. We're going to go check out Argentina. It's been a while since we have you been able to check out any of our Suns Planet Travels episodes yet, Bruce?
No.
should definitely check out one of my favorites. We had Pat Burke on. We went to Ireland in our minds. But I was drinking Guinness along the way, and he was talking about his time with the Irish national team and what it was like learning about a little basketball. And, of course, we got to talk a little 7 seconds or less Suns. So we've, of course, been to Chile. Shout out to Juan Carlos Araneda as well. And we've been to, Uruguay, Paraguay, Singapore, Australia. I'm going to see if I can get them all. Philippines, Canada, France, Spain, England, Ireland, Kenya, India. Yeah, we've had some amazing episodes. And if you ever want to go back and check them out, I always recommend people start at the second half, because the first half is just usually a recap of the Suns games before we get into a little bit of what's it like being a Suns fan in X place and what the culture's like out there. So check us out next week. Bring a glass of Malbec if you like, if you're an Argentinian fan. And with that, Al McCoy, I don't know. Tell us where to get that positive cookie that Bruce is eating. That's what we need. Share the knowledge, Al. That's what we need from you right now, my man.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine here on their home court.
Here's Perry. Cigar Hurd. Here's the jump shot. Good! It's good!
Al McCoy with you courtside. Pumped up a three.
Shazam! He ties it. Hey, D.A. Al and Tim up here.
happy birthday!
Right. Yeah.
I know it's from all the happy birthday, baby!
Here's Cameron Payne out on top. Durant, three-pointer straight away.
Shazam! I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone in this arena this afternoon, to all of those that are watching and listening on radio and TV. Thank you for allowing me to tell the story of the Suns for 51 great years.
That pretty much wraps things up here. And for one last time, this is Al McCoy saying thanks for being there. Thanks for being with us tonight. And from the Footprint Center here in downtown Phoenix, we'll just say so long for now.